This episode of Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by Movement Watches. Movement Watches was founded on the belief that style shouldn't break the bank. It's a good belief. Movement Watches started just $95 at a department store. You're looking at $400 to $500. They figured out that by selling online, they're able to cut out the middleman and the retail markup, providing the best possible price. We're talking classic design, quality construction, styled minimalism. Greg Miller looks awesome in his red and black watch, and you too can look sexy with a whole bunch of different color combos. Get 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to movementwatches.com/kinda. That's MVMTwatches.com/kinda. Join the movement. Best catch line ever, like always. All right, fourth topic of the day, as always, brought to you by you. You can go to kindoffunny.com/gamescast topic, just like all these dudes, to get your question read. Starting off with, I am Russian. Russian is R-U-S-H-I-N. So he's a quick dude. He's fast.
He's in a hurry, actually.
Yeah.
You don't know how fast he is.
No. Yo, you're right. You're right.
Kevin's always Russian.
Kevin is Russian. Does Nintendo get a pass? Yes, it's a very clickbaity question at a glance, but let me explain. Disclaimer, these are just my observations. I've never owned a Nintendo console and I've never played a Zelda game. Nothing personal, just haven't gotten around to it. Maybe someday. Breath of the Wild is currently sitting at a 98 on Metacritic, with virtually every major outlet giving it a perfect or near perfect score. By all accounts, this game is great. I'm not trying to dispute that, but I also know that I've heard many a handful of people in the industry praise Skyward Sword or Twilight Princess, and yet those games respectively have a 93 and 95 on Metacritic. So my question and or discussion topic is this. Do big Nintendo franchises have a tendency to draw out higher scores from reviewers based on virtually every game's quote journalist having some kind of childhood nostalgia for Nintendo? Again, I'm not saying Skyward Sword or Breath of the Wild is anything other than great, but looking from the sidelines, it certainly seems like Nintendo gets reviewed in a vacuum and praised for features that have been a staple in the industry for 5+ years sometimes.
No, it's a great point and a great question, because that was the big thing, right? When these scores start rolling in and it's getting 10s, it's getting this stuff. Now, granted, we were playing it and I was enjoying it. It was like, oh man. But I do remember when this happened with Skyward Sword. I remember when IGN gave it a 10, right? Didn't we at the time? I remember when I took that copy home and popped in and I was like, oof, no, I don't. I played a couple hours, like nah. And I want to like this Zelda, and I couldn't like that Zelda. And somebody had hit me up on Twitter and said, if this wasn't Zelda, if this was new IP, you know what I mean? Last Fighter Man or some shit like that, would it be as well received? And it's a great question, because I do think it does get a pass in a lot of ways of, sure, why are the controls like this? Why is the jump down? I can put it up there, sure. But even then, why, like, you know, Andy Cortez from Rooster Teeth tweeted out of like, but what if we could click in the stick and run, guys? What if we could click in the stick? And it happens to me all the time, where we've been playing games for so long in this style where it's like, oh fuck, an enemy pops up and I hit fucking R3 to run, he crouches and it gets killed. I'm like, motherfucker, like, you know what I mean? Like, god damn it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do this because there's no way to just objectively review games. By definition, it's opinion. And I think that you bring in your own thoughts into all of that. And when it comes down to it, you have to review Zelda as a Zelda game, not just as another video game. Yeah. Because that is what it is. And you're comparing it to all these other games and stuff. And I feel like Nintendo does get the bump. And I think a lot of it is because of the nostalgia and stuff. And I think that's because people want Nintendo to succeed, because Nintendo does have the magic about them that they put into their games. So you do kind of like forgive a lot of the issues. I don't like the controls in Zelda. I've said it a million times. And of course, there's fanboys that get upset at people being critical of things that they love. That's the internet. That's life.
Yeah.
But I don't think that takes away from the greatness of the game. And like, to me, it would be a 10 or whatever. When you bring Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess and all that into it, it gets complicated, because yeah, you're right. Like, in my opinion, Skyward Sword, not a 10. Yeah. But is it a 9? Is it an 8.5? Like, okay, IGN gave it a 10. And even at the time, I was like, fuck that. And I worked there. Yeah. But like, again, it's one dude.
Yeah, of course.
But again, like, even Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, they have so much good about them that they do. I mean, they really do. Whether it's the dungeon design or the boss fights or whatever, they like Twilight Princess in particular, horrible tutorial, horrible, but so much other good things about the game. I'm like, well, these are fantastic. But then where does that come down to in okay, it's getting bonus points because it's Zelda. It's like, okay, well, it's also getting points because it has all these good things, but then it's getting minus points because there are fundamental flaws when you compare it to the other games. Yeah. But I feel like other games then at the same time get bonus points for being a new IP. And, you know, it's like, oh, well, we're gonna think of this and give it the bonus points of, man, this is something new. It's not Zelda. So I think it goes in every way. I think Nintendo is more so than any other developer or publisher in the industry. They get more bonus points than anyone else. But I think that it's for a reason. And I also think that they are the first company to get torn down when they do something wrong. So, yeah.
Colin.
Yeah, I think Nintendo clearly deals with a super pro bias in the gaming industry and has since I joined it. If their game, pretty much ubiquitously, with the exception of the game, I mean, as far as the games I played, the exception of maybe Super Mario Galaxy, would have been scored probably a full point or 2 points or even lower on Metacritic if they were not on Nintendo platforms, not made by Nintendo. I think Zelda is the great example of that. Twilight Princess is in no way, shape, or form a 95, and Skyward Sword is in no way, shape, or form a 92. And I don't believe for 1 second that this game is any way, shape, or form a 98. So I think that they do get a pass, and that's what I was saying. I was like, wow, it was nice playing a game. Welcome to 2008. You know, in terms of just my initial impressions of Zelda, I'm like, what is it? And I think it's so obvious. If this wasn't a Switch game and this wasn't a Zelda game, no way would it get 10s. I think that's obvious. It's, people can look at that as anti-Nintendo bias, but I think that there's a strong pro-Nintendo bias in the industry. And I think it has something to do with what you said, which is that people grew up with Nintendo and root for them in a way. And really, I think there's some critics, some journalists that do as much as they can to try to sell games for Nintendo. And so I think it's kind of shitty. And I agree with his insertion that the last time there was a Zelda game that was truly revolutionary was Ocarina of Time. Now, my favorite Zelda game is Majora's Mask, but it wasn't revolutionary. Ocarina of Time was revolutionary, just like Mario 64 in its own way was revolutionary. And Super Mario Galaxy really did something to 3D Mario and made it revolutionary in its own way. But Nintendo's given way too much credit for making these amazing revolutionary games. Like if Splatoon was on PlayStation, no one would give a fuck about it. And if Splatoon was on PlayStation, Xbox One, would sold 100,000 copies probably, because Nintendo made a third-person team shooter that you play online. Suddenly it's this revolution, and I'm a little tired of it personally. I wish that I really knew how people felt about Zelda and how good. I wish there was some sort of objective way to be like, what is the Zelda game? It's not a 98. So what? And I can tell you that from playing for a couple hours. No way in God's green earth. So how? What is it? And how would it be scored if it was on a PlayStation? I think it's a great question. And they're the only company that enjoys that, I think.
Second question comes from Layman Else. Recently, I realized I think I genuinely have a bit of a crush on Yennefer from Witcher 3.
Yeah.
Yennefer. Have you ever got the feels for a video game character?
No. Although I've found them attractive in the past.
I
really wanted Miranda in Mass Effect.
Who?
Madison Page, Heavy Rain. I was like, yeah, Madison Page, you're cool. I like you.
Okay.
Oh, I can sex you up? Okay. That
Yeah.
happened. Sorry.
Yeah.
But it was Ethan doing it. You know what I mean? He had been through a lot. He deserved it.
Yeah, I've never had a crush on a video game character.
Bullshit.
Not a crush, but I've been attracted to him.
Sure,
Thought
yeah,
they're
of
hot.
course.
Riku from Final Fantasy X comes to mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Big fan.
Is she the one in the bikini? The yellow bikini top?
Yellow Bikini Top and X2, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. The Midnight Kid. Hey, Greg, Tim, and Colin. My question stems from Colin's stellar and recent. Colin was right about physical versus digital games. I was wondering about the viability of game publishers adopting a method more like Blu-rays, where the purchase of a physical copy may also provide you with a digital copy. For myself, the idea of buying a physical game to play while also having the option to have a digital code in case something happened to the disc, I think may help keep physical copies around longer, but I'm no expert at these sort of things. Thanks for all the content you guys make. You put smiles on more faces than you could fathom. I wish they would. From my understanding, from things you guys have said, it sounds like that there's not just a copy and paste button where people can make codes, and there is some weird ramification to getting
you get
out
a limited
codes.
number of codes and all these different things. And I think the one here is, and I'm speaking without understanding how the Blu-ray, Ultra HD, all that crap, those combo packs do it, and even how comics really do it as well, because comics have a similar thing. Some comics, I think the problem here you run into is the resellers market, where it's like, all right, he wants it in case something happens to the disc. Okay, well, what if, though, you can only use the digital code if you have the disc in your system? What's keeping you from redeeming the code and selling the disc to your friend, or vice versa? That's the issue I think you run into where it needs to get at. So then it just becomes a complicated future. Not to mention that really we're just playing the waiting game of inevitability, right? Where what this comes down to is the fact that no, like this is going to happen, and I understand. We talk about this all the time, the digital future, and wanting the games to go all digital, and inevitably it's people from the middle of the country, from other countries that just don't have internet that can hold up with this. I have this many gigabytes, GBs as my cap. We only get these number of speeds. I get that, but we're every day tumbling towards not having that, and have 5G Wi-Fi be everywhere and just beaming it to you. That was the most exciting thing I ever had, like revelation, talking to our friend who works at Apple, and not at all on the tech side, but being like, he's like, the phones aren't going to matter. 4G and LTE, none of that crap's going to matter. Eventually, we're getting to the point where it's just going to be Wi-Fi everywhere. It's going to be Wi-Fi whatever in like that. I'm like, holy shit! If that to do away with cables and to just be able to do it that way and have awesome systems that work that way, great. So it's one of those like, do you really want to jump in and invest your time in this thing to find the solution that is a problem for a very small group of people? Like, inevitably you're going to get to people, whether it's like you buy your Switch came on day one and Zelda didn't. So fuck, you wanted that hard copy, but you want to play Zelda now, so you download it and you go, that was easy. And like, that's it. It's little things, right? That starts. The more and more great games are smaller games that are only coming out digitally. And like, granted, limited runs that doing their thing, but you're getting it that way where it's like, okay, like, how is that going to actually work?
I think a big problem going into it too is the difference between games and movies is games generally cost more to buy individually. And then how many times have I seen people give away their digital code of movies because they have the disc and they're not going to use the digital one? That could definitely create a piracy issue when the codes are just being given away because you're essentially getting 2 for 1. So they would need to figure out a real solution for that, which gets hard. I mean, obviously PC games have been doing it for years, but there's a lot of piracy on PC games as well.
Yeah.
I think it's different just in the sense that games are more expensive typically, and the Blu-ray market is pretty much dead compared to the gaming market. So I think that's them saying like, oh, just buy and you can get it digital. But on the other end, I mean, retail sales are lowering, but if a game sells 10 million, a AAA game says, Horizon's slated to sell 8 million copies, and I'm sure 6 million plus are retail. There's no need for them to draw you in. I think that the codes are necessarily put in there to stymie the complete death of physical media in movies, which I think is right around the corner, frankly. So I think it's just a different kind of scenario. Both of them are dying, or both of them have a death sentence. And I think that the Blu-ray is just closer. So that's a way for them to keep everyone involved because streaming is so prominent and prolific now.
16 Bits of Awesome says, do you think the Nintendo Switch will have a half-generation upgrade, much like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One S, or even the DS to the DSi? Given the nature of the console, what would a half-gen upgrade even look like? Definitely.
Yeah?
Right. Oh, yeah.
I mean, my knee-jerk would have been no, just based on the fact that Nintendo's never seemed to really give a shit about their tech, but then this DSi thing.
Well, Nintendo's always done it. I mean, on the handheld side, which again,
but this is their console. Don't forget,
but
Timmy.
But it's also their handheld.
Sure.
So I mean, they've done it forever with DS, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy, which then went to Game Boy Color after 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely see one. What it looks like. I mean, Nintendo's always done weird shit with their handhelds, limiting what can be done on each system. So like when we got to the DS, there's a DSi, DS Lite. I think that's what the third one was called. It might have been the other order. Like there were certain games only playable on the newer versions, and the Game Boy Color, obviously the same thing as in that case. And then with the 3DS, there's the new 3DS, which some games are only playable with it, and some games, even though they're not marketed that way, are only playable with it, in the case of like Hyrule Warriors. So I definitely think that they will. What it looks like, I hope it has bigger buttons.
You and these buttons, man.
I don't know. I can see them doing one with the 1080 screen and that type of stuff.
Thinner. It'll be thinner for sure. Everything's thinner.
Yeah, thin's good. But it still needs to be compatible with the Joy-Cons, so it can't be too much thinner.
I mean, I would say a hard no. That just doesn't seem like something Nintendo would do. They did it with DSi. I bought it day one for some reason, and they didn't really seem to take advantage of it. It seems to be antithetical to everything they do now. I also don't think Switch is going to sell well enough to demand that either. So I think that would be a mistake for them to do that. There's what the fuck is the company called? Super Data or whatever, the guys that are always churning out information or projections, have only 5 million Switches for the first year, which is bad. So I just don't think that there's going to be demand for an upgrade, because I think that if you're getting involved in the Switch, you know that it's not going to have power. And that's kind of something you accept.
And that's what I think. Yeah, I mean, leaning back to what I was saying is Nintendo, I don't think will care about the power, and I don't think third parties are going to be like, well, we would have brought Mass Effect Andromeda over, but we won't because it doesn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even necessarily think they'll have more power. I don't necessarily think it'll add more power. I just think that just the resolution of the screen, so it can just match what it outputs to on TVs.
Who the fuck cares?
I mean, but it's just another. Who cares about the XL compared to the 3DS? Like it's those little things.
3DS
where,
was ugly. XL was beautiful.
I mean, it wasn't. The XL screen looked like shit because it didn't have the resolution.
Well, it just looked like shit because it's a 3DS.
Well, that as
Not
well.
like that Vita that looked beautiful. OLED, LED, it didn't matter. It was beautiful.
Yeah, some more beautiful than others.
Yeah, that's right. Freedom Wars, what up?
But I definitely think they're going to, and I think that Nintendo's been historically they've always had special edition consoles, and a lot of their fan base does buy multiple iterations of the console they already own. Like I've seen people with like 5 or 6 3DSs just because they wanted the Fire Emblem one and the Pokemon one and Zelda one and all that shit. I think that with the Joy-Cons they have a unique situation to do that type of stuff for cheaper. But
Thanks for bringing some.
I think that they might.
Yeah.
There's definitely going to be like special edition Switches at some point. I think sooner than later, and I think that they will start to have the new Switch or whatever the fuck.
I
Switch
better
XL,
figure out how to
Switch
get my
Pro.
fucking saves off it if they want me to buy a special edition.
That stuff will be figured out.
It better be.
Yeah, it
I'm
will.
telling
Be.
you, Tim.
It will be.
Tell Mr.
Only on
Nintendo.
the Pro, the Switch Pro, Switch XL Pro. Anyway, that's it. Leave your questions here next week. Until next time, I love you. What's up, beautiful? You're still here? Well, thanks for that. You can subscribe to youtube.com/kindafunny right there. Or you can subscribe to youtube.com/kindafunnygames right there. Or you can subscribe to us on Patreon and give us money and help my dreams come true right here. Love you.